The Miami Marlins in the 2023 season went 84-78, claiming a wild card spot. However, they ended up losing in the wild card series. In this offseason, there hasn't been a ton of action from this Marlins team. However, their 2024 season still have some high hopes. They still have a lot of talented players, especially on the pitching side of things. So let's not waste any more time. My name is Derek. I'm here with John. You're watching Bleacher Brawls, and this is your Miami Marlins 2024 team profile. First things first, we're going to talk about some of the key players on this Marlins team. Like I said, they do have some talent on this team. Like I said, they were a playoff team last year. So I'll hand it over to John first. Who are three key players for this Marlins team? And out of those three that you feel are key, who's one that you would like to expand on, elaborate on?
Well, for me, I think pitching is incredibly important to be a successful team. And the Marlins have a depth of young pitching. And with the Sandy Alcantara injury, that having Tommy John, they're going to need to rely on Jesus Luzardo and Braxton Garrett. Two pitchers that if they have the seasons they could potentially have and really live up to their potential, they can really carry this team because they could just be like lockdown starting pitchers. The player I want to focus on, though, would be Luis Arraez, because Luis Arraez is a real table setter for this team, tremendous hitter, and if he's hot, getting on base, he's going to provide opportunities for the batters with deeper in the lineup to score, to drive him home, get him and have him score runs. So there's going to be a lot of RBI potential for the guys who end up batting behind Arraez this season, and I think if he could really go out, have an elite season, match with the two pitchers going out and having a really good season, then the Marlins are going to be in a good spot to make the playoffs again, which I'd love to see.
Definitely. Arraez has won back-to-back batting titles, back-to-back years, AL and then NL, so that's kind of cool. For me, though, I do want to bring up Jazz Chisholm. I feel like he is kind of the face of that franchise in terms of marketing and social media. I feel like he's kind of the big face, the big personality. I do like Jesus Luzardo, but I want to talk about Yuri Perez, because Yuri Perez, when he came up looked dominant, and obviously not having Sandy Alcantara is going to hurt for the Marlins, but having a full season of Yuri Perez is definitely going to help. Last year, 91 and a third innings and 19 starts in the big leagues, a 3.15 ERA, 4.11 FIP. Those numbers don't look outrageous, but he had some flashes of looking like a really, really legitimate top-end starting pitcher last year. And also, too, this is only going to be his age 21 season. And realistically, we say it's his age 21 season. He doesn't turn 21 until April 15th. There's also that. So he's going to be 20 at the start of the season. And this is a guy who's just a mammoth of a human being. He's 6'8", like just a mammoth. And put him on the mound, throws hard, nasty stuff. When you add him to that rotation, and then you think even into 2025, and you start thinking Alcantara too, like it's crazy. But I think Yuri Perez, if I'm looking at like dark horses for like a Cy Young, for the Cy Young in the National League, like a dark horse candidate and a really good option for a dark horse candidate is Yuri Perez, because he has that kind of ceiling of being a guy who could potentially win a Cy Young one day. That's how good he is, and that's how good his stuff is. So I think when looking at it, I think Yuri Perez is a very key player for this Marlins team, especially if they want to make it back to the postseason without Sandy Alcantara for 2024. Moving on to some of their key offseason moves to the Marlins, they did trade for Nick Gordon. They also traded for Vidal Brujan. They signed Tim Anderson. Outside of that, not really many on-the-field moves. They did lose Jorge Soler in free agency. Also, the other move, the thing that happened this offseason for them was losing Kim Ng. Kim Ng not choosing to stick with the team. I'll hand it back to you, John. Which one of these offseason moves or happenings do you feel is key for the Marlins?
I think the offseason move for the Marlins really going to be key is the Kim Ng resigning from as the general manager, president of baseball operations, whatever that title was there. She was put in that spot by Derek Jeter, who is the guy that really set, let's keep this relevant to Bleacher Brawls. He's the guy that set up the Marlins to be successful to where they are today. Like you mentioned, Yuri Perez was signed as an international free agent. I believe he was signed as an international free agent, and that was during the time of Derek Jeter's running of the Marlins. And Kim Ng had done a tremendous job building on what he kind of started. Well, they worked together because he hired her, and they really worked together to build a very talented young core. And now they're transitioning to somebody else. I don't even know who, but they're transitioning to someone else. That changes everything. And the fact, maybe they'll still be able to build off of this core. Maybe they'll still be able to develop young talent. But it's not a given like it has been for the past couple of years. So the resigning of Kim Ng is detrimental. Or maybe she's fired. I don't remember. That played out weird to begin with. That's going to turn out to be detrimental for the Marlins.
Well, she had it was like a mutual option, I think, kind of like situation where the Marlins, the Marlins wanted her back and they exercised their side of the option. But she resigned because they were trying to hire and bring someone in over her head as like president of baseball ops, because she was the general manager. They ended up replacing her with Peter Bendix, who was the Rays senior vice president of baseball ops and general manager. Although for the Rays, the general manager spot wasn't the top spot, and isn't the top spot in their baseball ops. I think it's the second spot. So he's going to get to lead a baseball operations, and I think that's the big move for this Marlins team. Bringing someone from the Rays too, someone who's been really successful. We've seen this trend throughout the big leagues of going and getting people from the Rays for an office. We saw the Red Sox do it, right? And with what they're doing, we saw way back when the Dodgers hired Andrew Friedman, they hired him from the Rays, and that's always a talking point. I think that's a big move. The other thing I do want to touch on, though, very quickly. I do want to touch on the fact that they did sign Tim Anderson, just because I think they needed a shortstop. Last year was kind of like Joey Wendell's playing short, or and it was and a couple other guys, and it was just like they didn't really have a shortstop last year. And for an infield that, I'm gonna be honest, is like kind of not set defensively in terms of last year. They went into the year with like Gene Segura playing third base, and I love Arise, but I don't think he really should be playing second base, so Tim Anderson at short I don't think necessarily helps that defense out. It's going to be tough for their pitchers because they do have some really good pitchers. Good pitchers would do even better with good defense behind them. That's not necessarily the case. So but I think it's going to be interesting because Tim Anderson had a really, really, really rough year last year. He had an OPS under 600. That's bad. He is one of the worst. I think he was bottom 10 in terms of weighted runs created plus last year among qualified hitters. It was bad. So I think if they can get him to have a bounce back year, I think that could be really interesting. Last but not least, I'll hand it back over to you, John. Expectations for this Marlins team. What are their expectations entering 2023? What should they be doing this year?
Their expectations has to be making the playoffs. They're like I said, who knows what is going to come from this team. Usually you see someone from the Rays come and take over. The team gets broken down and rebuilt. So I don't know how long this window is going to be open for this team. And once guys need to start getting paid, is Miami really going to be the team that pays them? They're not known for handing out contracts for re-signing players. So they have a window right now, and they have to capitalize on it. And if they're in a really good position come the trade deadline, I would say just deal some of that talent from within the depth of their farm system and get the players they need to possibly get them over the hump, because their window's not going to be open for long. So I see them trying to capitalize on it this season. So my expectation is a playoff team. If things break right, this could be a real, especially with that pitching staff, this could be a team that could make a deep postseason run, like with Arizona Diamondbacks.
Yeah, they have the pitching to do it, definitely. The interesting thing, though, too, is especially the starting pitcher side, you have Jesus Luzardo, Braxton Garrett, Yuri Perez. You also have Edward Cabrera, Trevor Rogers. Trevor Rogers, who was really good, I think it was 2021, he was really good, but he struggled the last couple of years. You have a guy like Sixto Sanchez, who looked really good in a little bit of time playing the big leagues, and then has had all these health issues. And is he in shape? I don't think so. But he seems to be healthy, at least in terms of doesn't have an injury of some sort. You have Max Meyer, who is a former top prospect, who there was the third overall pick in 2020. We'll see what happens with him. They have other pitching prospects too. Dax Fulton, who was their second round pick in 2020. Noble Meyer, who was their first round pick this past year. A lot of pitching depth, a lot of starting pitcher depth. If they're in at the deadline, I could see them dealing from that starting pitching depth in the minor leagues and making a push for it. So I think, like you said, the expectation for them should be to make the playoffs. That should be their in-house expectation, make the playoffs. They did it last year. They very well could do it again. And they did it last year with some holes in their team. If they get to the deadline and fill a couple of those potential holes that are open, or those holes naturally fill themselves from players stepping up or whatnot, I think they could definitely make a strong little run in that postseason if they are able to get in. But overall, I think that's a good place to stop with this team profile. I think it's a good leaving off point. So make sure to check out all our other team profiles. We've been doing them. We're about midway through, actually just a little bit more than midway through. So make sure to check all the previous ones out. Or if you're watching in the future, watch all the other ones out in the future that will be released in the future as well. Part of our 40 videos in 40 days. For John, my name is Derek. Thanks for tuning in to Bleacher Brawls, and we will see you next time.